Yeah. That's a hell wiki up. Hey, it's Brown Tiny Crypto Blog. I've been MIA. Actually, I've been here. I just haven't had anything to say. But now I do. Welcome. So I'm going to jump right into it here. Perfect. So what Bitcoin did, had a video interview recently with Rational Root. He does a lot of charting, looks at trend lines, patterns, things that existed within the Bitcoin 4-year cycle. And in one of the fundamental questions was, is the bull market over? Are we done? Is there any more room for the price to move? And within the context of this came the question of what is behind the influence of Bitcoin's pricing, of what people are willing to pay. And he brought up a lot of Rational Root, brought up a lot of points such as longtime holders, people who've been, through a certain amount of cycles, their willingness to sell off their assets based on the rate of return. People that were around before 2011 have made 10,000% gains, and they control a very large stash of Bitcoin. So for them, it's no big deal to peel, for them to peel off 1 or 2% of their portfolio. You're talking lots and lots of Bitcoin, tens, dozens, hundreds, thousands. People that jumped into later cycles, 11, 13, 17, 21, their gains aren't as large. Their incentive, or that incentive to sell and unload some of the holdings based on gains, is less so. He also mentioned how there's less of a retail influence. There's more of an institutional. You've got the exposure through ETFs. You have exposure through direct purchases. You've got your, oh God, I don't keep up with this. What is it? The Bitcoin treasury companies, the direct buying through that. And you've got just the game theory playing out with nation states looking to get into the game, and political jurisdictions, again, like the treasury companies, and just Bitcoin becoming more common as a value asset, as an asset in and of itself for the purposes that an asset will be used. And Root said, hey, we still have some feet to go. And actually, I was looking on somewhere, I think we're like 880 days as of recording, roughly 880 days away from the next halving. I'll figure out how to say that. Whatever. From the next Bitcoin reward being cut in half. How about that? And the point that kind of came to my mind was, I've been noticing pretty much since my days deep in the mud, deep in the weeds with Bitcoin in 2017, that it makes sense that as Bitcoin is held and touched by a much broader audience, a more mainstream everyday audience, not just the enthusiasts, the technologists, the politically and socially motivated, anarcho-capitalists, the people who are more driven by the fundamentals that align with their view, their beliefs, their interests. And now it's just becoming a more, if you look at it in general, like a more vanilla mainstream asset. You own some Bitcoin, or you own some gold, or you have some stocks or bonds or real estate or a business or whatever it is. It would go to say that the things that drive each crowd to buy and sell their sentiment would be mirrored in Bitcoin's price action. And where we're at now is that, well, with more institutional and financial services and it being a financial asset, it is more subject, the price is more subject to the macro conditions that matter for those things. So just as the price of gold is driven by things like monetary inflation, risk, uncertainty, oil is driven by economic factors, the price of different assets like stocks or real estate are driven by different macro factors. So too is Bitcoin, more and more so, where it's not, it may be at a point where that 4-year cycle is dead, not because, oh God, I'm forgetting that term too. Holy moly. Where it's just up forever. But the price swings are subject to the macro conditions where if all of a sudden we hit a massive sell-off like we did in 2008, everything got sold, including Bitcoin. But now it would be more so because we've got the ETFs and people are unloading their portfolio and the price is going down. Well, I don't know the full legal mechanics of ETFs, but that would mean selling pressure. And if they're unloading Bitcoin, there, creates a cycle and an amplifier. So we'll see. Same thing with demand. We'll see. But it does make sense. And I think that on a general trend line, it would make sense to see there be more influence from a macro events than a 4-year psychological cycle of run up and enthusiasm, then a crash and breakdown of sentiment and just hits a wall, and then going through that psychological trough, and a sandpaper stage, and then the slow rebuilding of positive sentiment, and then seeing the price do as well. That was it. That was an observation I felt was worth pointing out because, well, we're going to find out how it unfolds. So just something to throw out there. Thanks for tuning in. I have no idea what I'll be on next. Depends what happens in this world. But you can follow TINYCRYPTOBLOG in all the social media sites, listen to the show notes. And with this, be well, everyone. Talk to you soon.